Well, welcome and buenos dias and buenas tardes and buenas noches, depending on where you are. I think this is a special opportunity, and because it's framed around personal and professional conversations of my journey, I thought I would share some of the key points that inform me on my early journey. For example, one of the first things I ever wrote about was death. That was the first book, first article I ever wrote was called Death, a Necessary Concern for Nurses. And it was triggered by my own journey, because my father died when I was 16, very suddenly of a heart attack. So all of my early work at the University of Colorado was on loss and grief and death and dying. I got grants and workshops, and so and all my writing was about that. So anyway, that was a very informative journey for me before I had my PhD. During my PhD work was in being exposed to the concept of phenomenology. I knew that phenomena, but I didn't have a word for it. So part of this journey of scholarship and theory development and philosophies and giving a distinction to the discipline of nursing is really tied to language, because our language defines us and words give meaning and purpose to how we create our reality through words and language and the energy that words carry. So I thought it would be kind of interesting to hear that kind of perspective of what informed me, because the personal becomes the professional. We can't separate them out. And so in a Unitarian science, one of the things that it does, it invites each person to express themselves and their own creativity and their knowledge and their personal talents in a way that gives meaning and purpose, and other people can identify with it. For example, in qualitative methodology, there's a concept that people rarely know about, but it's called intersubjective confirmability. It sounds like a big word, intersubjective confirmability. But what that means is that your phenomena, your experience is so real and so authentic that it can be confirmed subjectively by other people. That your truth and the truth of this work is so real that it can be confirmed by others. And that's called intersubjective confirmability. And with that, it leads to the concept of the truth of nursing. And the evolution of my work then led to grasping the concept of phenomenology. And then after my PhD, during my faculty experience at the University of Colorado, I was disheartened because everything was geared toward medical science, and nursing was trying to advance under medical science rather than under nursing. And at that time, there was no meaningful philosophical foundation for nursing as a science or as an emerging discipline. So my first book, which was published in 1979, believe it or not, yikes, was really about trying to make sense out of nursing. Like, is there anything that's core to nursing that transcends time and space and diagnosis and medicalization and ages and treatments? is there anything core about nursing? Which, of course, ended up being 10 Caritas processes. But that was the first book. And those 10 Caritas processes were considered core to what nursing was. And I use the terminology core versus trim. And I actually used the word phenomenology in that first book. But as I evolved, and I continue to be involved in my own scholarship, through my work with doctoral students and heading up the doctoral program and holding administrative positions at the University of Colorado and so on, I then my work shifted after I had my first sabbatical. And my first sabbatical was in Australia, and I was there for a full year. And so my second book was written during my sabbatical in Australia, but it was informed again by loss and grief because I was doing a research project with the Aboriginal on a reserve in Western Australia in the outback. And so part of that journey was both focused on loss and grief, then it built upon the first book. And that second book was called Human Caring Science, A Theory of Nursing. And I dared to use the word theory because my first book, Nursing, the Philosophy and Science of Caring, this book, was, and of course it was, the original was green, hardback. But this book was really the foundation of the Caritas processes. The second book kind of provided a context for human caring science and why human caring science was different from regular science. And again, it was informed by my work with these Aboriginals. And so as I evolved in my scholarship and teaching, then the next book actually I wrote was about postmodern nursing because I had also had a second sabbatical by then. And it was in Sweden, and I was doing work in Sweden and in Norway and Denmark and Finland, all over Scandinavia. And it was fascinating at that time to realize that, particularly in Sweden, where I was located at the University of Gothenburg, the culture, the whole society of Sweden is on a caring society. That's the tagline for Sweden, is to have a caring society. Of course, it's all sort of shifted with all the dynamics of changes in the last decade or two. But in any event, that informed my work because I was exposed to all these European writers and thinkers and philosophies and so forth. And so my third book was really on postmodern nursing. And I was really moving away from kind of the empirical validation of the science to the ontology. What does it mean to be caring? The ontology as a worldview. And as that work expanded, from I had an accident, which would inform my life with having a loss of my eye. And with that, I then, it led to the book, Caring Science is Sacred Science. Because during that time, I had to be really quiet and still to have my eye healed. And from the Caring Science is Sacred Science, my next book was then expanding into Unitary Caring Science. And with that, all of this evolution of my own journey, I just want you to understand, any of you can be theorists. Any of you can develop in this contribution when you can give personal meaning to your own journey and help to validate, because then other people can subjectively identify with it and relate to it because it's something that's authentic and core. So the other, what's happening with this work, it has moved from a theory to an explicit philosophy, to an explicit value system, to a scientific worldview that is located in the unitary transformative context of nursing's evolution. And it is also now informed by a deeper ethic that I've written about called the ethic of belonging, that we all belong to this infinite cosmic field of universal love, and that we actually are engaged in our caring moments because they are transpersonal. If we are holding this Caritas consciousness at a higher vibrational level, in those caring moments, we can actually repattern the field. And of course, I see Lauren here. And so this whole energetic perspective can actually be transformative for self and others in those moments. And this takes us to a higher level of knowledge and a higher level of a unitary field to which we all belong. And with that context, now we can understand, perhaps, if you continue to study this work, that the theory of human caring and the 10 Caritas processes are absolutely universals of human caring. But they are located in the unitary caring science framework, because unitary caring science, in that unitary transformative perspective, holds everything that's lower in an energy under it. So it doesn't take away anything, but it elevates everything. And if you think about it another way, I've referenced Willis Harman, who was involved with the Institute of Noetic Science early on. And one of the things that he wrote about was these different levels of science. He says there's the lower framework of science, you go lower and lower and lower, or the higher level of science. When you go higher and higher in your phenomena that you're embracing and studying, you can accommodate more and more phenomena. So you go higher and higher in your views of your reality, then you get into the spirit world, and then you get into higher vibration of the energy and the human connection with God consciousness, if you will, or love consciousness. So the theory has evolved from these identifying these core of caring to bringing caring and love together, and bringing caring and love and healing together, and locating it all under a bigger umbrella. So it also doesn't take away from other nursing theories, because once you get into the unitary caring science umbrella, it can accommodate multiple theories. So, but however, as soon as you put caring into your model of science, you have a different model of science, because it brings in love, it brings in energy, it brings in consciousness, it brings in a relational worldview, a unitary worldview, and it brings in an ethical worldview and a different starting point. So the starting point of the ethic of belonging, and we all belong together to this infinite field of love and connects us, is the starting point for unitary caring science, in contrast to our dominant paradigm, which is a separation. We're all separate from each other. But we're waking up as a world, we're waking up as a civilization, we're waking up globally, and we're all connected, and we're in a unitary quantum universe. So everything we're doing to ourselves, we're doing to others. So I just invite each of us to continue on our own journey, because we can't advance the discipline of nursing until we advance the consciousness of the nurses themselves. So each one of us has a responsibility to evolve in our own journey in order to contribute to the real change that's coming and has to change for society and for the world. So, as you know, I get really dramatic, so just bear with me. And I'm going to stop at this point and be quiet. Whoosh.
Thank
Yes,
you.
let's see what questions have emerged.
Let's all take a moment here. Thank you, Jean. It's powerful for all of us to hear this and your journey. I want to say thank you, and thank you for everyone who's here today. We do have some questions. Celeste from Argentina. Hola, Celeste. Bienvenidos. She writes, I would like to ask Dr. Watson about self-care for nursing professionals, as I am concerned about the socioeconomic determinants in Argentina that lead to neglect to the point of needing hospitalization. Thank you very much. And I think you are not alone in that question. It's about really about burnout, about caring for nurses and staff, nursing professionals. So do you want to talk about self-care within that, Jean?
Well, the whole focus of what I've just referenced is about our self-journey and self-caring. And the very first curative factor, the very first caritas process is loving kindness and equanimity and compassion for yourself. And so each one of us are really required and challenged to find our own practices, whatever they may be, and it is whatever is right for you. I mean, there's much attention now to meditation, but I developed those little 7 sacred sutras of mine as a guide for myself in terms of my own self-care practice. So, like just be still, stillness and silence and solitude and connecting with spirit and your higher self and having simplicity in your life and cleaning out your mind and head and having service as part of a sacred gift of self and surrendering to that which you can't control are just examples of one way to kind of guide you as little mantras for a self-care practice. But it can be whatever is right for you. It can be art, it can be poetry, it can be nature, it can be music, it's whatever. It's a way of getting outside yourself and forgetting yourself and let yourself be aligned with your higher consciousness, your experience of receiving love. Because we are love, but we don't know it. So we have to be open to receive that and to be present to it in whatever ways we can find. And I think the biggest challenge now for hospitals are to really become caring and healing centers that nurses can organize and help to change and repattern. Because now I think the pandemic has kind of awakened people to the need for nurse managers and nursing leaders to create caring and healing environments within the hospital system for the nurses themselves. And many hospitals are doing that, and Watson Caring Science affiliate hospitals are doing that and having Caritas coaches, people who are informed and educated and knowing how to inform and guide the advancement of theory-guided practice to advance the professional practice of nursing to serve society. And if we're not doing that, then maybe we don't exist in the future these are really critical times for us to pay attention, to mature in our own standing with what we have to offer and give voice and language and inform moral action to it. And caring science is not just for nurses, it's really a guide for humanity.
I thank you. I think that Ava Martin Ruiz from, where are you from? I think you're from, oh, you're from Spain. Hola. I think she has a question about the distancing of nurses from their relationship with patients. So the focus on the centrality of their work and the failure to address the patient's spiritual and emotional needs. And I think this is exactly what your theory discusses. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, it's just so old paradigm. It's
Yeah.
an outdated paradigm that we have to distance ourselves. We have to learn how to be authentically present in that moment and have compassionate presence by holding that space in our heart to be there with, I mean, even in a brief moment of silence, to hold that space in that moment so that you can allow something else to happen rather than rushing in to just do something and get out of the way, body to body. Now we have to pay attention to the energetic presence, what we bring into that space, and how do we hold ourselves and prepare ourselves before we enter that room, even briefly. It can make a huge difference. So the notion that you can't be authentic and be personal, actually, some of the early research on caring was really about the personal experiences of the patients, where the nurse actually expressed something personal with the patient, made all the difference in the patient's experience because they felt the humanity patient. And that's an example of a transpersonal caring moment. It's the energetic field that connects the two people in that moment beyond just the physical aspects of their being together.
Absolutely. And from that, this is from Constancia Rubio from Chile. She's a new generation of nursing. She's part of the new generation, and she says she would love to be part of the positive change and positive impact of nursing in the whole world and human caring. So, join us, because that is our purpose, our mission, and our aim. So this is absolutely what is required of us. And I wondered, Dr. Watson, if you want to speak about, how can this be taught and who needs to teach it and learn before it becomes embedded in cultural change?
Well, it depends on where you are, but our academic systems are totally outdated in terms of really attending to the ontological development of the students. They focus on the technological and the task. And so now we have this major shift of educating student nurses from day one about what is the discipline of nursing, with the emphasis on human caring and healing and health and wholeness, which is a very different paradigm than preparing people to go in and conform to institutional norms of a hospital system, which is totally broken. So now we have a responsibility to really deconstruct and reconstruct new possibilities that are forthcoming, are needed for humanity to survive our crisis of our world, whether it be in illness or whether it be in non-physical kind of traumas that are happening all over the world. The evidence of non-caring all over the world right now is evident in so many ways. So by having this opportunity as educators or as clinicians, wherever you are, to really readdress and invite opportunities to learn about the discipline of nursing and caring science is one way to help sustain our survivability and our purpose in life.
Thank you so much. We have a question from, I'm going to be a little bit rebellious because Robert Emmanuel Chiduku from Zimbabwe has asked to ask his question to you with himself. So I hope Hector doesn't mind, but I am inviting Robert. Do you want to unmute yourself and share your question, please?
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm so happy to connect with the Dr. Jean Watson today, the Caritas coaches, yourself, and the whole enthusiastic Caritas coaches all over, and the Caritas champions all over the world. I'm so happy to connect with a person like Dr. Jean Watson, whom we learned about in nursing. My question is about, is it possible that Dr. Watson can take us through the process of publishing a theory, because she's one of the two living legends that we have in nursing currently. And us as the young generation in our early 30s, we expect to learn from her. So I wanted her to take us through the process of publishing a theory, how a theory was published. Was it in form of a book? Was it a research article? And for other emerging theorists who are inspired by her, where do they start from? So basically that's my question, because I believe that a theorist should reproduce other theorists who are like herself in order to advance the academic stature and standing of the nursing profession. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So how does one first begin the journey of becoming a theorist?
Well, first of all, I think you have to have some kind of passion and kind of something that's pursuing, that you want to express, that you want to reveal, that is present in nursing that isn't there right now, that hasn't been made manifest. And the other thing I would encourage you to think about as a foundation, no matter what perspective one may take on a theory development, underneath the foundation of the work, whether you're conscious or not, is what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human to you? And making that a little more explicit rather than, because however you view humanity and the human person is going to inform everything that you do around developing theory, because nursing is about humanity and in our environment with the universal field. And so however you can be clear yourself about your view of what it means to be human will inform whatever the passion is that you're trying to communicate and make explicit through language and defining the phenomena that you wish to pursue.
And how, how and when were you, taken seriously in a way? I think he's asking about, did you first write a book? Was it a journal? What was the process of publishing your theory? I remember you spoke to me about how you wrote your first book because you couldn't find that. You couldn't find anything that would help you through your doctoral program. So you wrote it yourself.
Well, it was after my doctoral program, but it was when I was at the University of Colorado, because there was nothing in the literature at that time that I was exposed to that had anything to do with a meaningful philosophical foundation for what nursing is. And that's where everything was focused on curing. And so I developed those 10 Caritas processes. At that time, it was called curative, and I made up the word curative to counterbalance curative, to give meaning and depth to what nurses had to offer to humanity for the human caring piece. So yes, the book was the first journey, but I must tell you, the first drafts of my book, the feedback from the publisher was awful. Was shocking. It took a lot of effort to write that first book. So it's not unusual to have things rejected or be, having to critique and redo things as part of that journey. So don't be discouraged.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Dr. Erica Caballero from Chile. Incidentally, I wanted to share with you that our global groups, there's a lot of Caritas coaches there that when we showed the film. And Dr. Erica Caballero is our director of the Caritas Coach Education Program in Spanish. She talks about strategies that you would suggest to promote spirituality in ICU nurses who are very close to death of their patients. How can you travel alongside that death journey, being a death doula, as it were?
Well, that's a sacred journey. And when the starting point, with this ethic of belonging is that we all come from that sacred circle and we're all returning to that sacred circle of love. And it's a sacred journey. And in the hospitals, we tend to make it a physical journey rather than a spirit-filled journey as a sacred process. So by understanding that and having the sensitivity to work from the other person's frame of reference, the dying patient, so to speak, and responding to them from the inside out rather than outside in, and helping them on their journey to meet whatever that their needs are, to be able to acknowledge with them and have a conversation with them or invite them in to what it is that they want for these last days of their life, so that you're not just doing the usual things. So being holding sacred space, having those caring moments in simple ways, in small ways, or grand ways, can help them to make that journey. And also being a mediator between the medicalization of the technology of holding on to the physical and helping them to, and other practitioners, to make this a sacred journey. And it may or may not happen in a hospital. Maybe it needs to happen at home more.
Beautiful,
Beautifully.
beautiful. Thank you so much. We have a question from, I don't have, Tiziana. Where did you put it for me? You put it somewhere.
But while you're waiting, I wanted to let people know that I am going to be in Cancun on June 5 through 7 for a major conference. And it's going to be, Melanie's going to be the translator again. Thank you so much, Melanie. And it's going to be a conversation with my grandson about my other journey of my illness and my own personal shift from using curative factors to Caritas processes and how that happened to bring love back into caring science. So anyway, you're invited.
We have a question from Tiziana from Switzerland. Welcome, welcome. She writes, as you reflected on the notion of participating in a greater energetic and creative unity, I was curious as to how much your thinking may have been influenced by the Platonic understanding of the soul and its place within the cosmic order.
That's a beautiful question.
That's a metaphysical book.
Right. Well, my last book, or my recent book, is on metaphysics and a cosmology of love. But early on, even in the earlier writings, I talk about soul, because when you are really able to attend to the person at that end, at that quiet, personal, human-to-human connection, that transpersonal moment, you actually are allowing space for the authenticity of that person's higher self or their soul, and to connect with them. And actually, in the future, it's been acknowledged that nursing care is going to be care of the soul. In a healing model, it is in care for the soul, because we have been disconnected from our soul with the physicalization of our body and the treatment of the body at all cost, in contrast to allowing for the soul. And when somebody has an illness or a trauma, they go back to the core of their soul, of what their soul needs. So this is a very important perspective of caring science and nursing care. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We have just a few more minutes left. Dr. Paula Diogo, you remember her from Portugal, from Lisboa. We were at a beautiful conference there. She
Thank you.
wants to, she asks you to reflect on unitary caring science and the human experience of the emotions of those being cared for and the person caring for them, i.e. the nurses. So that transpersonal moment that happens, perhaps you could elaborate on that a bit.
Well, when you step into that space with another human being, in that moment, if you can just hold a still point, T.S. Eliot writes about the still point in the middle of the dance. If you can just hold that still point, you're allowing for something else to happen in that moment where you can actually authentically connect with that person. And sometimes silence and stillness with another person might be one of the most powerful ways of connecting with them, so that you have that healing moment opening up where somebody can access their own inner healer. You're not going to heal, but you hold space for someone else to help you facilitate accessing your own inner healer. And so that's that transpersonal caring moment. And when you can hold that space, and often it can be done in silence or in the way in which you touch another person. Because you're not just touching them physically, you're also touching them non-physically.
I love that. It's the coaching model, and it's also what healing are they offering you?
It's a mutuality, because the transpersonal is like that patient might be there for you just as much as you might be there for them. And this is particularly true with working with dying patients. They have so much to teach us. We think we know everything, and we don't know anything. I'm a master, I know nothing.
And that is why we need to turn the model upside down from that hierarchical, medical model. The nurses have the answers. The nurses are what we have been waiting for. And now is our time to be advocates for this work. It's important to have these moments together. It's important that all of you are on this Zoom call from many different countries. And apologies for those that didn't get in. We'll send the recording. It is being live streamed on Facebook, but also and on YouTube. Yeah, we had a boo-boo with the Zoom. It only allowed us a certain amount of people in. So I think people will be wanting to hear this. But just in order to close and to honor all of us coming together at this time, Zoom to Zoom, face to face, having that connection, if you wouldn't mind just closing this sacred moment, the sacred circle, by just grounding us, and any final words of wisdom, advice, guidance, love.
Well, I just want to say how special it is to have this opportunity, and to honor ourselves and each other, and to pay attention to what's happening in the world, so that you are paying attention to what you can do to make a difference, not to go out and protest or anything, but just those small moments, those caring moments are affecting the whole field. And there are 27 million nurses in the world. So if we start doing this one by one, it's radiating out, because we're in a quantum universe. So everything we're doing is affecting that whole field, for better or for worse. So we have to pay attention to it, for better or for worse. And this, lastly, I want to close with that Chinese proverb, because it's about our light, that we bring the light of our humanity to this work in our world. And it goes like this. Many of you have heard this. If there's light in the soul, there's beauty in the person. If there's beauty in the person, there's harmony in the house. If there's harmony in the house, there's order in the nation. If there's order in our nation, there will be peace in our world. So take your beautiful light and go in peace, because when you're practicing caring, we're also contributing to peace in the world. So God bless. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Gracias, gracias.
Thank you so much. And I'll hand over to Hector, who has organized this. We love you, Hector. Thank you for creating this space for us. Is there any final moments for you? And Thank you, Jean.
First, I need to say something to Jean. We are so touched for your life, for your love, for your. So thank you so much for be part this and sharing with us all this beautiful time with us. So thank you so much, Jean. And I quiero agradecer a todos por ser parte de esta hermosa comunidad de lo que es Latino Iberoamérica. Y bueno, en nuestra próxima actividad es el 21 de octubre, quedan todos invitados y también a la webinar del 10 y 11 de septiembre. Un fuerte abrazo y gracias por ser parte de esta comunidad. Nos vemos pronto.
A strong hug, he says, a strong hug. Make sure you hug yourself. Remember to look after your beautiful light and your beautiful self. That's the first step. Love you. Namaste.